have a good night, all right? Stay out the way. Yo, that shit good. Don't know where it's at, not my problem. I don't give a fuck.
Two niggas try to jump me, I beat the shit out of them.
You beat two niggas at the same time?
That's the video.
I might have to see it.
That's the solo fuck the nigga bitch, nigga mad. Trolling on the ground, wanna make songs and shit. We don't really give a fuck though. I ain't doing shit. All my cases, I beat that shit juvenile like a smart man. I'm not a felon. I ain't worried about cases. I can stay out of trouble. I'm not do that.
Not for me,
because I really don't like bitch ass niggas. I got a zero talent for this pussy shit that go on.
This is 19-year-old Quavon Jeremiah Robinson, known as Slimy Bezo, a young rapper whose rising visibility ended after he was shot dead not long after he claimed he ran Charlotte. In the late hours of October 24th, 2023, police responded to reports of gunfire at the Express Mart on Beatty's Ford Road near Interstate 85 in North Charlotte. When officers arrived, they found multiple people shot inside the store. One man was pronounced dead at the scene. Quavon was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, but eventually died from the gunshot wounds. Not long before that, videos had been circulating online showing Quavon speaking boldly about his status in Charlotte, words that would soon be followed by consequences no one could reverse. What happened next unfolded in seconds, and parts of it were captured on camera. But before we get to how a public moment turned into a fatal one, we have to go back to where everything started. This is the life and death of Quavon Jeremiah Robinson. Quavon Jeremiah Robinson was born on April 26, 2004 in Charlotte, North Carolina, a city that would shape nearly every part of his life. From an early age, his environment taught him lessons about awareness and survival. His father spent time incarcerated, which meant much of the responsibility at home rested on his mother. Because of that, Quavon learned early how to be observant and cautious, paying attention to the people around him and the situations he was in.
I started this young nigga shit since 13, and this shit really before 13, cause it really go back to like 12 years old. If y'all really do y'all research, these goddamn videos of me, I've been shooting videos at a young age. You feel me?
Well, but when you say started young nigga shit, like what is young nigga shit though?
Anything you can think about in the city, from goddamn rapping, cars, ticking, anything you want to put on that shit.
Yeah.
That early awareness mattered because it influenced how he moved as he grew older. He understood that where you come from can affect how others see you, whether you want it to or not. And as Quavon entered his teenage years, that understanding began to show up in the way he expressed himself. That expression came through music. Quavon started rapping at a very young age, around 12 or 13 years old. At first, it wasn't about attention or recognition. It was about speaking openly in a way he felt people around him would understand. Rap became his outlet, a place where he could describe his reality without filtering it to make others comfortable. And as his lyrics became more confident, so did his identity as an artist. As Slimy Bezo, Quavon began releasing music that spoke directly to his environment. His songs didn't rely on complicated metaphors or hidden meanings. They were straightforward, describing street life, ambition, confidence, and the pressure that came with growing up in certain neighborhoods. That honesty resonated with people who recognized the places and situations he mentioned. And slowly, that recognition started to grow. Soon enough, Slimy Bezo's name began circulating beyond his immediate neighborhood. His music spread through social media, shared by listeners who felt it reflected their own experiences. He wasn't a national artist, but he was becoming known in Charlotte, especially among younger listeners. But what pushed his visibility even further was something unexpected. A clip from one of his music videos went viral on TikTok, gaining over 1 million views. In the video, Slimy Bezo and others were filming in their neighborhood when someone suddenly warned that police were approaching. A firearm that had been used as a prop was quickly removed, and the moment felt unplanned and real. That clip spread because it didn't look staged, but as the attention increased, so did the consequences of being seen. Because visibility doesn't just bring fans, it also brings scrutiny.
Oh, hold on.
Y'all have a good night, all right? Stay out the way. Yo, that shit good. Don't know where it's at, not my problem. I don't give a fuck.
Recently, you just went viral on TikTok. I think like 1.5 million views on TikTok.
Yeah, that shit going crazy. Dang, man. I was really on that drink. Woke up, posted that shit.
Bro, that's my word. I thought that was part of the video when I seen the police like stop and talk to y'all. So you saying that won't count?
There wasn't no doubt. Like, say we right here, right now, exactly how we was. We was shooting the video on our media. 12 pull up. They said 12 coming. 12 was really coming. That shit really happened. That bitch was on some airhead shit. Yeah.
As more people watched Slimy Bezo, interviews began circulating where he spoke openly about his past. He talked about being exposed to street life from a young age and starting early in environments that demanded awareness. He didn't deny it or soften it. He spoke plainly about how growing up shaped him.
Tried to jump me. Two niggas tried to jump me. I beat the shit out of them.
You beat two niggas at the same time?
That's for the video.
I ain't gonna lie, bro.
But we don't fun with a lot of niggas because I really don't like bitch ass niggas. I got a zero talent for this pussy shit that go on.
Nah.
All my cases, I beat that shit juvenile like the smart man. I'm not a felon. I ain't worried about cases. I can stay out of trouble and I'll do that.
At the same time, he spoke confidently about his place in Charlotte's rap scene. He referred to himself as one of the hottest young rappers in the city, especially among people his age. To supporters, that confidence looked like ambition and belief in his future. To others, it raised concerns about how much pressure he was putting on himself while staying in the same environment. And that pressure was real, because as Slimy Bezo's music gained attention, his personal history became harder to separate from his public image. That separation became even more difficult after his arrest. On a date 2 years before his death, Quavon was arrested in Charlotte for robbery with a dangerous weapon. He was later released on a $40,000 secured bond. The arrest didn't stop his music career, but it changed how people interpreted his lyrics. What once sounded like storytelling now felt closer to real life. But instead of pulling back, Quavon continued moving forward. He kept releasing music, he kept filming videos, he kept doing interviews. His confidence didn't disappear, and his presence online continued to grow. To some, that looked like determination. To others, it looked like risk stacking on top of risk. Because he didn't leave the environment that shaped him. Despite his growing visibility, Quavon stayed connected to the same neighborhoods and people he grew up around. He filmed videos in familiar areas and spent time in places where everyone knew who he was. His music videos continued to feature street imagery, including firearms, even if they were used as props. None of that guaranteed violence, but it did increase exposure, and exposure matters when attention is high. As Slimy Bezo's platform grew, more people knew his face, his name, and where he spent time. Not just supporters, but strangers. Not just fans, but people who didn't know him personally. The margin for mistakes became smaller, even if he was trying to move carefully. And that reality began to close in. Quavon often spoke as if he understood the risks around him. He talked about starting young, knowing how the streets worked, and being aware of danger. But awareness alone does not stop violence. And just as soon as it seems like his career was gaining momentum, the situation around him became far more serious. Because what happened next didn't happen in a studio, an interview, or a music video. It happened during a regular night, at a place people pass through without thinking twice. And that moment would change everything. But that part of the story comes next. By the time October 24, 2023 rolled around, Quavon had already built the kind of local attention that can feel exciting and dangerous at the same time. He was only 19, but his name was getting repeated in Charlotte, online, in group chats, in comment sections, and in real-life conversations around the West Side. He was moving like someone who believed he had time to figure out everything later. But then one ordinary night turned into a headline. And what happened next would pull his name out of music talk and into police tape. On the evening of October 24, 2023, everything changed.
Arrested for a second person has died after a double shooting in Charlotte, and an 18-year-old has been arrested for murder.
Well, this all happened earlier this week at a gas station on Beatty's Ford Road. Charlotte-Mecklenburg police arrested 18-year-old Jalen Johnson in Kannapolis, with police there assisting CMPD in making that arrest. He has been charged with murder and attempted murder. Today, CMPD confirmed a 19-year-old Quavon Robinson died from his injuries. That's on top of 27-year-old Jadarius McCullough, who died soon after the shooting happened Tuesday night. A third person was also shot and taken to the hospital. Their condition is unclear, but police say their injuries are non-life-threatening.
Late on Tuesday, October 24, 2023, Quavon Robinson was at the Express Mart on Beatty's Ford Road near Interstate 85 in North Charlotte. It was close to midnight, the kind of hour when gas stations become gathering spots, people stopping in, talking, lingering longer than planned. For Quavon, this wasn't an unfamiliar space. It was part of the environment he moved through every day. But that night, something inside the store began to shift. Quavon was among a group of men inside the Express Mart when an argument started. What the argument was about was never clearly spelled out in public, but what mattered was how fast it escalated. Voices rose, tension built, and in a matter of moments, an argument that could have ended with people walking away turned into something permanent. Because someone pulled out a gun. And once that happened, everything collapsed at once. Shots were fired inside the store. The sound echoed through the small space, sending people running and scattering in every direction. There was no time to react, no chance to understand what was happening before it was already over. In seconds, Quavon went from standing inside a gas station to fighting for his life. By the time the shooting stopped, 3 people had been hit by gunfire. Outside, the scene spilled into chaos. Cars stopped, people called for help, and just before 11:50 p.m., officers were dispatched to the location after reports of multiple people being shot. When first responders arrived, they immediately realized how serious the situation was. One victim, 27-year-old Jadarius McCullough, had been killed at the scene. He was pronounced dead there, his life ending before medical help could change anything. Quavon was still alive. He had been rushed to the hospital along with another victim. Early reports said one of the two was expected to survive. The other, Quavon, was listed in critical condition.
News we've been following for several hours now. Police searching for the person who shot 3 men overnight in North Charlotte. One of those people who was shot was killed.
This was the scene on Beatty's Ford Road just off I-85. Our crews watching as police collected evidence, and there were some tense moments as grieving families showed up to that crime scene. It's why our Mary Calkins has moved a few blocks away to CMPD's Metro Division Team office. Mary, those families understandably hurt, angry, and confused.
That is exactly right, Mary. And they, of course, want answers about what unfolded inside that Express Mart convenience store around midnight. I do want to get to some video our crew took at the scene overnight. We know investigators tell us this started inside the Express Mart. A group of men got into an argument and someone pulled a gun and opened fire. 3 men were shot. One of them died at the scene, and we know 2 others taken to the hospital. We're told one of them is expected to survive and the other is in critical condition. Now, officers spent several hours combing the store, both inside and out, for evidence. They spoke with the employees and witnesses who were there. Now, investigators are looking at the store's security camera footage, working to identify any suspect. We are asking that once that is complete, if they can provide us with a description of the suspect. Now, while at the scene, we spoke to Jacqueline Lewis. She's a community activist, and she told us both her son and later her grandson died of gun violence. She knows firsthand what these families are going through.
We have got to put the guns down, talk to our children, and bring everybody together as a community. That's just the bottom line. That's what we need to do. We want to be able to walk the streets. We want to be able to go out and shop. We want to be able to go out and do these things without worrying about whether or not we're going to get gunned down, especially in our own community.
Now, CMPD's Major Ryan Butler, he echoed Lewis's comments there. Now, I can tell you there has been a concerted effort through law enforcement, the violence interruption team, and community members to cut down on crime in that neighborhood. Of course, an effort that saw a setback overnight. So we will continue following this story. But for now, live in Charlotte, Mary Calkins, WBTV, on your side.
All right, Mary, we know you will keep us updated on that scene. Thank you for that update this morning.
At just 19 years old, his name wasn't immediately released publicly while doctors worked to stabilize him. For hours, his condition remained uncertain, and the people who loved him were left waiting, hoping, and bracing for news they couldn't control. Meanwhile, back at the Express Mart, investigators stayed on scene through the night. They spoke with store employees, they talked to witnesses who had been inside when the argument started, and they focused on the one thing that could tell the story without emotion: the store's security footage. Every movement mattered now. Who Quavon was standing near, how the argument began, when the gun appeared, who fired first, who ran, who didn't get the chance. But in those early hours, one critical piece was still missing. There was no suspect publicly identified. And while police worked the case from the ground up, Quavon remained in the hospital, his life hanging in the balance. The story wasn't over yet, but it was already far heavier than anyone had expected when the night began, because surviving the shooting was only the next battle, and the outcome of that battle would change everything. As that first night stretched into the early morning hours, the weight of what had happened began to sink in, not through rumors or online chatter, but through something far more immediate. Families started arriving near the Express Mart, gathering behind police tape, searching faces, asking questions no one could yet answer. And while investigators worked the scene, another clock was already ticking. Because Quavon was still alive, that detail mattered more than anything else. Inside the hospital, doctors were working to stabilize him, and outside, the entire direction of the case depended on whether he would survive. He was placed on life support, and for the next several days, his condition did not significantly improve. His family waited through updates measured in small changes, numbers on monitors, cautious words from doctors, moments of hope that never quite became certainty. But while his loved ones waited at the hospital, investigators were already moving forward. Because a shooting like this, inside a public business with multiple victims, demands fast answers. Detectives began rebuilding the night step by step, and that was not a hard task for the detectives because in a place like a convenience store, there are cameras surrounding the area. As detectives reviewed surveillance footage and gathered witness statements, the pictures started to sharpen. And just days after the shooting, that work led them to a suspect. On Friday, October 27, 2023, investigators arrested 18-year-old Jalen Johnson in Kannapolis, North Carolina. He was taken into custody by Charlotte-Mecklenburg police and transferred to the Mecklenburg County Jail. The arrest came quickly, signaling that investigators believed they had enough to move forward, and that this case was being treated with urgency from the start. But the arrest didn't close the story. It complicated it. Because Jalen Johnson was also young, barely an adult, and according to investigators, he did not know any of the 3 men who were shot that night. At that point, the charges reflected what investigators could prove at that moment. 1 victim had died at the scene, 2 were still alive, and the case remained open-ended in a way that made everyone uneasy. Because Quavon was still fighting, as days passed, his condition remained critical. The hospital became the center of gravity for the case, and for his family, the waiting itself became unbearable because there was no closure, only the possibility of loss hanging in the air. And then that possibility became reality. On Saturday, October 28, 2023, Quavon Robinson died from his injuries after being on life support for several days. He was just 19 years old. The fight that had kept him alive since the night of the shooting came to an end, and with his death, the case changed forever. What had started as a triple shooting became a double homicide.
Following a developing story in Charlotte, a 19-year-old is now behind bars for 20 outstanding warrants, but there are a lot of questions about why he was out of jail despite multiple attempted murder charges. Take a look. Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police said with the help of the Union County Sheriff's Office, they arrested Jalen Johnson on Tuesday. He was wanted on charges of attempted murder and shooting into an occupied dwelling. Police say they found 6 guns on him during his arrest. We do want to note Johnson was charged with murder in this gas station shooting in October of last year. It happened at the Shell station on Beatties Ford Road in North Charlotte near I-85. The shooting left 27-year-old Jadarius McCullough dead, as well as Quavon Robinson dead. Court records show Johnson was with McCullough in the store when 2 others entered. It's when shots rang out. Johnson was 18 at the time and claimed the shooting was self-defense. The state later dropped his murder charge, citing a lack of evidence to say otherwise.
That shift carried legal consequences immediately. Investigators announced that the charges against Jalen Johnson were expected to be upgraded, now tied to the deaths of Jadarius McCullough and Quavon Robinson, with a 3rd victim surviving. In cases like this, each life lost is treated separately under the law, even when everything happens in a single burst of violence, and that meant the stakes had just risen. But even with an arrest, there was no sense of relief, because an arrest is not the same as justice. It's only the beginning of a much longer process, one that moves through courtrooms instead of crime scenes, and through legal arguments instead of flashing lights. Jalen Johnson's first court appearance was scheduled for Monday, October 30th, 2023 at 10 a.m., marking the official start of the case's next phase.
Accused of shooting 3 people at a North Charlotte gas station last week will appear in court this morning.
Since we brought you that breaking news last Wednesday, a 2nd victim in that case has died. Mary Calkins live in Uptown Charlotte with more on what we have learned about the investigation. Mary?
Yes, Alex, because the 2nd person in this case has died, we are expecting the charges against the suspect to be upgraded. Now, on Friday, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department's Violent Criminal Apprehension Team arrested 18-year-old Jalen Johnson in Kannapolis. He was transferred here to the Mecklenburg County Jail, where he will face a judge for his first appearance this morning. Now, police told us Johnson got into an argument with someone inside the Express Mart on Beatties Ford Road just before midnight last Tuesday. Investigators say Johnson pulled out a pistol and began firing. He hit 3 people. Jadarius McCullough died at the scene. Quavon Robinson died 3 days later, and a 3rd man who was shot is expected to survive. Now, police told us at the time Johnson did not know any of the 3 men he is accused of shooting. We know Johnson will be in court this morning at 10 a.m. We're going to be there, and we're going to bring you a report today live at noon. But for now, reporting live in Charlotte, Mary Calkins, WBTV, on your side.
And for Quavon's family, that shift was jarring. While the legal system began its slow march forward, they were left dealing with grief that didn't follow a schedule. As of now, the case remains unresolved in the public record. Jalen Johnson is still the only person charged in connection with the shooting, and the case is moving through the court system. There has been no publicly announced trial outcome, no sentencing, and no final resolution shared with the public. For Quavon's family, the waiting has become part of daily life. There is no clear endpoint yet, just a case that continues forward, one step at a time, while the loss remains permanent. Meanwhile, across Charlotte, the reaction wasn't only about one rapper. It was about what keeps happening in that same kind of public space. In the days after the shooting, the response spread beyond police updates. Community voices spoke up, not with speeches, but with lived experience. One local activist talked about losing family members to gun violence and said the pain felt familiar. A police leader acknowledged that there had already been efforts to reduce violence in that area and that this shooting was a setback. That mattered because it showed this didn't feel like a random headline to the people who lived nearby. But the aftermath wasn't just about statistics or statements. Quavon Robinson was 19. He had a public name, a growing audience, and a future that was still taking shape. Jadarius McCullough was 27, and his death was immediate, giving his family no time to prepare, no chance to hope. The third victim survived, but being shot meant carrying the weight of that night forward. And when police said the suspect didn't know the victims, the violence felt even harder to understand because it suggested how quickly a public argument can turn deadly between strangers. That detail shifted the focus of the case. It wasn't only about who fired the gun, but how a moment of anger in a public place spiraled beyond control. A convenience store argument is supposed to end with people walking away. This one ended with lives permanently changed. And as investigators continued building the case, the attention moved from the chaos of that night to what would happen next, because an arrest is only the beginning. What matters now is what can be proven, and whether the system can deliver answers that families are still waiting for.